أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hamidi Abdul Rahman. Today I'll be presenting my paper, Scale for Positive Identification of Jinn Possession. I'd like to start by defining possession, which I take from the definition in ICD-11. Possession trance disorder is characterized by a trance state in which there is a marked alteration in the individual's state of consciousness and the individual's customary sense of personal identity is replaced by an external possessing identity in which the individual's behaviors or movements are experienced as being controlled by the possessing agent. So this external possessing identity is what we call jinn in Islam. And jinn possession is embedded in the Islamic faith. But how do we diagnose jinn possession? Well, one of the common way and the reliable method is through observations of reactions to ruqyah. When ruqyah is read onto somebody who has got jinn possession, then you get negative reactions. Example of negative reactions are vomiting, body or head or limbs shaking, screaming, heavy breathing, jinn speaking, sinister laughter, collapse or fainted, aggressive or wanted to be aggressive, abusive, eyes flickering, strong pulse in stomach, struggle to vomit, feeling burning hot, unable to see the full shahada, eyes rolling, that means all white, or sharp pain. Well, there is also another way of diagnosing jinn possession, that is through symptoms, because anybody who has got jinn possession will exhibit some symptoms. There has been a study, a quantitative study on the symptoms of jinn possession, where 34 symptoms were analyzed using exploratory factor analysis. And in the analysis, 23 symptoms were identified as being significant and the remaining 11 to be less significant. If you look at the symptoms of jinn possession, there are some symptoms which are considered to be symptoms of mental disorders. There are overlapping symptoms of jinn possession and mental disorders. In the analysis of the symptoms of jinn possession, it was found out that some symptoms are more significant than others. For example, paranoid has a loading of 0.684, which is more significant than, let's say, dream of deserted road, which has got a loading of 0.440. If somebody has got no symptoms at all, then we can say for sure that he or she does not have jinn possession. And if somebody has got all these 23 symptoms, then we can say that he or she definitely has got jinn possession. So in between, there must be a number of symptoms whereby if it exceeds that number of symptoms, then you can say for sure that the person has got jinn possession. And if it's less, then probably not. Okay. Well, how do you establish that? We can first create a scale by adding the loadings of all the symptoms that the person has. The scale can be from 0 for a person with no symptoms to a maximum of 14.158 for all the 23 symptoms. So in the ideal world, we can say that, okay, if somebody has got no jinn possession, they will have symptoms up to a certain score, and then above that, there will be jinn possession. In reality, the distribution overlaps. That means there will be scores whereby it can be either from the non-jinn possession distribution or from the jinn possession distribution. So instead of just having a true negative and true positive, you have cases of false negative and false positive. So it is important actually to define, okay, where that cutoff point is. What is the score that determines gene possession from none? So we have got a choice of choosing the cutoff point. Okay, it's either from the low end to the high end. If you set the cutoff point, the cutoff score to be low, then you will end up with having a large number of false positive. That means you say that the person has got gene possession, but in fact he hasn't, and that's not acceptable. And if you set the cutoff point to be too high, then you end up with a large number of false negative. You say that the person has got no gene possession, but in fact he has. We have to balance that, okay? Find the optimum point where it's acceptable, it's reliable to say that, okay, above this point, then you have gene possession, and below, no. Okay, and the way to do that is by analyzing the sensitivity and specificity of the data. Right? So the equation for that is here. Okay, and by calculating these two variables, we can then analyze using a receiver operator characteristic, or ROC analysis, and find the optimum sensitivity and specificity. Okay. So in the analysis, after calculating the specificity and the sensitivity, you can plot the graph, and the optimum point is the point which is closest to the top left-hand corner, and that point corresponds to a score from the real data. So in this case, the analysis of 188 samples, 530 of them have got possession and 500 has got no possession. The cutoff point was the one with the sensitivity of 0.73 and the 1 minus specificity of 0.33. And this corresponds to a score of 1.9. So anybody with a score above 1.9, we can say that yes, he or she has positive gene possession, and anyone with 1.9 or below, we say that now you don't have gene possession. Okay. So once that cutoff point has been established, we need to validate the scale. So to validate the scale, we have to get new samples. In this case, 188 participants were recruited, 100 male, 88 female, using purposive sampling and snowballing techniques. And the method is by diagnosing using the scale and comparing the diagnosis with Ruqyah. So that means everybody will be diagnosed based on the symptoms, and at the same time, they will also be diagnosed using Ruqyah, and the result are compared. So the results came out to be that those above 1.9 who have been diagnosed as having gene possession, you have 100 cases, 100 participants, in which the scale diagnosis is positive, and this has been confirmed by Ruqyah, we call it true positive. And one case which the scale says that it's positive, but there was no reaction to Ruqyah. So we call it false positive. And those with 1.9 or below, 51 participants, or 27%, were negative by the scale, and also negative by Ruqyah, that means true negative, whereas 28 were negative by the scale, but reacted to Ruqyah, which is false negative. So if we analyze that, we look at the results, okay, those who have been diagnosed as positive, there is a success rate of 100 out of 109, or 99.1%, and only one mixed diagnosis. So it's possible that the person who have been misdiagnosed did not react to ruqyah because there was only one ruqyah. So if there were few more ruqyahs, then it's possible that the person might react to ruqyah. And in the case of non-possession, okay, the false negative actually are those people in the borderline. Okay, so if we take into consideration the less significant symptoms, then it can pull this person from the borderline to be positive. So with this scale, you can actually diagnose anybody who has got illnesses, whether it's mental illnesses or physical illnesses. For example, in the case study, a person with a severe eczema, right? This person has got 7 symptoms and the score was 4.612, which is far greater than the 1.9 cutoff score. And according to the scale, the diagnosis is positive gene possession. So when you get positive gene possession, the first thing you do is probably ruqyah. Okay, so after 3 days or 4 days of intensive ruqyah therapy, the skin condition improved from very severe to alhamdulillah good, amazing, alhamdulillah. Okay, so it shows that the eczema was caused by the jinn. So to conclude, okay, we can say that the jinn, the scale, can be used for positive identification of jinn possession if the score is above 1.9. And as a rule of thumb, okay, anyone with 4 or more significant symptoms will be deemed to have jinn possession. Anyone with 2 or 3 symptoms are the borderline, possible. And anyone with 1 or no symptoms, say, no, you don't have jinn possession. Okay. The benefit of this scale is that you can diagnose somebody whether he or she has jinn possession without the need to learn ruqyah. You can diagnose somebody who has got mental illnesses, mental disorders, or somebody who has got physical illnesses, and to check whether they have an underlying jinn possession problem or not. It should only be used for positive identification of jinn possession and not for negative. Thank you very much.